What does it take to create a sustainable creative business? This is the question that we will answer in this video today. And we will start with a very simple framework that I want you to all consider at the very beginning of you building your creative brand. And this framework is kudos to Marquise Brownlee. I know he's a little bit of a hot waters right now, but it's still a great framework because essentially within the octopus framework, Marquise suggests you to consider yourself as a creator, as an octopus, and each tentacle, a different role that you take on. It can be the creative side of things, right? You're an editor, you're a producer, you're a writer, you're on camera talent, you're a director of photography. On the business side, you take care of your inbox, so you're almost like an admin, but you're also negotiating some of those deals, so you're a manager. Maybe you're soliciting the deals and the collaboration, so you're an agent. So there's a lot of things that are happening within your creative business when you're just a creator by yourself. And at that point in time, or just a few hires in, it's very important for you to consider this framework because you got to ask yourself, how long can I really do it all? And when am I ready to kind of like give away some of these responsibilities to another person? And the reason why I think it's important for you to consider it early on is because you kind of want to develop certain understanding of who you want to be. Are you a creator who fully focused on the creative side? So you're almost like gonna say, hey, all of these creative things, this is mine. I want to do it. I'm very passionate about it. This is why I started. But all of this business side can care less. Can I give it away to someone else? And this is already a good point of operation because you can start thinking, okay, so for the future hires, if I invest on the business side and give away some of these responsibilities that are currently killing my time, I can go and afford spending more time on the creative side. The alternative can be you like the creative side, but you're like, hey, I suck as an editor, I suck as a writer, but I also, as I'm maturing and I'm building out the business, I want to learn a little bit more about what it takes to manage a proper creative business. So you could say, let me hire a writer, let me hire an editor in the future once I can afford it. And then that buys me time to figure out the business side of things and focus on the managerial items. This kind of very transparent perspective will help you because as time progresses, as opportunities come across your table, there'll be some exciting things. There might be some things that you're like, oh, I'm really passionate about it. I really can dive into this topic and I can be really in depth on every single detail and it's some sort of business idea. But if you look at that framework and you decided, no, hold up, I really want to focus on the creative side, you're kind of starting to shoot yourself in the foot and you're taking yourself away from things that make you passionate in the first place. And that's a shortcut to the burnout. You've seen many creators start building out the businesses, do not think about this framework, and essentially start doing it all. And as they hire for certain roles, but they don't think through the things that are keeping them passionate. They just try to hire based on someone else's advice. And at the end of the day, they realize that they're completely burned out because they did not hire people in the right spots. And they got completely pulled away from things that they're passionate about. And essentially all of this became a drag. And that's when you see folks like Matt Diavella just getting rid of the entire team and saying, I don't want to manage 10 people. I just want to do this thing because I'm passionate about it. And I'll figure out the business side, maybe with 1 or 2 additional employees. Don't go through that. That's frustrating for people who you've hired. That's frustrating for yourself. It's frustrating for your viewers because it's going to affect the quality of your content. Instead, think about this framework early and decide which tentacles are you keeping close to yourself. And this is something that you're going to be managing. And for which ones, eventually, as you can afford, you're going to hire someone else. And now as you decided on what it's going to be, you sorted your house, so to speak, the next item is for you to consider. And it's very simple. We're going to go through it pretty fast. What would make you happy in a decade? Again, something very important to ask yourself because for a lot of creators, the idea of the creator brand can be very different. For one creator, the idea of the successful long-term sustainable creator brand can be, I'm producing videos weekly, I have a couple of secondary channels, I have a podcast, I have a studio, and I help produce other things. For someone else, it's going to be, holy crap, I don't want to do any of that. And your decision might be, no, for me, a successful creator brand is when I can continue to create the content that I love to create for the foreseeable future. And this is something very important for you because as you start asking yourself this question, you should almost revisit it every 6 to 12 months and see if your position changed because it will influence a lot of the opportunities you're going to say yes or no to over the period of time as they come up. For example, now that you know from hiring perspective who you're going to focus on and who are those employees that you're going to potentially hire, the next point in time will be, okay, I have this opportunity to take on this business, or I have this opportunity to take on this brand partnership. how does it fit within my vision for that decade long relationship that I'm going to have with my viewers and my content. And as you mature as a creator, as you grow and develop certain tendencies, certain styles of content you want to create, and the ideas for what that future might be, you will also start evolving your internal structure for your team. You will also start evolving your idea of where should you be allocating more time. And this is the key metric, because ultimately once you have that North Star where you're heading with this 10-year plan, you at least know that it's never going to be a straight path. There's always going to be some zigzag, there's going to be some deviations, but it will help you filter out opportunities or things that you might be able to do if they're taking you in a completely different direction. And this is kind of like a common theme between the prior point, where essentially with hiring, you need to develop some idea of where you want to head, because then as things start distracting you left and right, you will know like, okay, I need to cut those things off because it's not helping me move towards my target. Similarly, the logic applies with this approach, where if you have an idea of what that creator brand for you will be in 10 years, anything that takes you away from that direction should be a thing you say no to, no matter how attractive it is or maybe how lucrative it can be for you, right? Money is always something that distracts people, but always consider the fact that even for an extra few bucks, is it worth potential risk of deviating from your path and creating that long-term frustration that again will lead you to burnout, will lead to the decrease in the quality of content, and eventual negative impact on your overall creator brand. So develop that idea of the North Star. It is important for the operations as well, as we're going to talk about in the next section, and start following that North Star and revisit that question every 6 to 12 months to see if your opinion has changed. And now, as you develop that vision for your team, you got your house in order, you develop the idea of where you're heading, so you have that North Star. The next big thing is to start thinking about how big of a business are you building and what kind of monetization efforts you need to take on to support it. And this is where this next framework comes in. This is essentially what I call kind of like a monetization quadrant. Very easy to understand. Think about the y-axis, right, the vertical, as complexity of operational execution, and think of the x-axis, right, so horizontal line, of the potential revenue. And so the more to the right you are, the more revenue you make, the higher you are on that chart, the more operationally complex it is. And the reason why this is important, if you are building just a personal brand where it's you, maybe a thumbnail designer, an editor, and that's about it, and you kind of like continue to produce the content, and that's your vision for the next 10 years, taking on more complex monetization opportunities, no matter how, again, lucrative they can be, will be detrimental to that vision. Because if all of a sudden, as an example, you'll say, hey, I want to start producing physical goods, and this is my team, you'll very quickly realize that unless you hire for someone to do that for you, or you find a partner like fan of a fan, like a fourth wall, right? Like a partner who will actually do a lot of fulfillment and development for you, all of this will fall on your shoulders. And then as a creator, essentially, you, again, back to my very first point, start getting pulled away from things that you're passionate about and getting deep into the details of things that might be very exciting. Something that really is an amazing opportunity, one of a kind opportunity that can change your life financially, but it'll drag you away from things you're passionate about. And all of a sudden, you're back in that dark place that we've discussed a couple of times now, where you're not doing things that you're enjoying. This becomes a job, and over time, you just run out of energy and you're burning out. So from that perspective, you have to kind of like start thinking, okay, if I'm not building that big of a brand, likely I do not need millions and millions of dollars in recurring revenue every month to sustain. Because again, you maybe have only thumbnail designer and an editor, and that's your team, and obviously you need to support yourself and your family. That does not require you to have 5 different monetization opportunities, like a merchandising brand, some sort of like live events, touring, and things of that nature. So you can kind of like stick to the less complex things where maybe you're just running a YouTube membership or some sort of like a Patreon membership, right? Opportunities. Maybe you just have some sort of additional like tips, buy me a coffee option on your pages, but you really kind of like rely on AdSense and some brand partnerships. Or again, maybe you have a very specific niche where you can provide your intellectual fortitude to kind of like consult other brands, and that's what you do. Or in the worst case, you're a photographer, very popular example, like you can sell lots, you can sell presets, you can kind of like sell different guides and things that are not as operationally complex for you to deploy as a single individual with a couple of employees. Now, if instead you're starting to think about, no, I actually want to go and build a proper brand, right? Where eventually, and we'll talk about the exit in a second, but eventually I want to retire. I want this thing to support me, even if I'm not there in front of the camera or in the office day to day. Now you start thinking about, okay, what kind of revenue streams do I need to create to ensure I can hire for the right people, for like the business managers, for the legal, the finance team, right? Thinking about, again, if you're doing merchandising, you need to have some sort of QA people, you have to have a warehouse, things of that nature. Now you need to start thinking about, okay, I need to have a lot more revenue coming in every month to support all of this, to support the payroll, support all of those fixed costs and expenses that I'm taking on to build up that revenue potential. And from that perspective, the next thing that you kind of have to consider is how do you kind of like sequence all of this in a way that it doesn't burn too much cash and you can kind of like slowly grow. And also, obviously, you need to consider where you are as a brand. In some cases, as a brand, you might have multiple different opportunities. It's more about just picking a couple and pursuing them from the operational complexity. Then you just kind of like consider the hiring and building the team around you. But there also might be the fact that you're still not big enough to create some of these monetization opportunities, to leverage them. And this is where you kind of have to almost like step back and say, okay, let me go again, focus on the content, focus on building the channel, and think about a couple of milestones that help you be in a position to go after those opportunities. And it can be the size of your audience, it can be your position as a thought leader in the industry, if say it's some sort of like live events or consulting, or do you have enough people in your Rolodex again to create an opportunity to say create a digital product, to create a physical product, to create some sort of event-based space where you can kind of like host different events and other creators, right? So opportunities are something that always be ample around you. There are always going to be many different things, especially as you grow bigger and bigger, you become that thought leader in your industry, in your niche. But until then, if you have an idea of kind of like how big of a business you want to build, and as you start thinking about all of these complexities that different monetization opportunity involve, you can start planning ahead and saying, am I in a position with where my team is at, where my vision is at for my brand long term? Am I in a position to say yes to some of these opportunities? And the best thing you can do is to use these frameworks as a way to filter things out. A lot of things that I share on this channel in general is about how to say no to things. It's not about, hey, how do you say yes and you go with it? Because there's so many different ways by which you can go about creating a business, creating and taking advantage of monetization opportunity when you say yes to it. That's actually the easy part. The hard part is to decide what do you say no to, because it's painful. After say years of creating content, saying no to brand sponsors, saying no to someone who is proposing you some sort of a business idea is a tough thing, because you've probably worked hard and worked your tail off for like 5, 6, 7, 10 years. You saw none of these opportunities. And now they're all coming at you from different directions. You get excited, you want to take them on, but saying no is the most important skill that you can learn as a developing entrepreneur now, not only just a creator, if that's the direction you're going with, because saying no to will show the discipline and will ensure you remain focused on things that matter for you, for your brand, and that will keep you in a positive space that, again, will help you grow the audience, will help you grow your brand, and eventually say yes to the right opportunity. And that brings us to the final point that you need to decide in terms of building a sustainable creator brand that will influence the complexity of the operations behind your business. And that question is, are you planning to exit it? This is an important one. Some people actually ignore it because they're just excited and they're kind of like in a moment of the creation, but it almost like mimics that question from a couple of sections earlier when we spoke about what is your vision a decade from now. Vision a decade from now kind of like describes the business and where you are as a creator. This specific question actually asks you from the perspective of these opportunities that you're seeing for yourself. Do you see yourself as someone who long term will become a lifestyle creator, meaning essentially you just continue to create and this is the thing that you do and you're going to keep doing it until you can no longer hold the camera, right? Or drone. I don't know, whatever you're using. But then there might be opportunities for you to transition to other media. This has been a popular venue in the past where a lot of the creators saw YouTube and Instagram and TikTok as a way to transition to like Hollywood, to the silver screen, right? Like being in the TV shows and whatnot. Is that the path that you're leading? Is it the transition to business? Again, thinking about different opportunities that might come across you. One of them might be for you to actually lead a business, right? Because you're going to develop certain thought leadership and expertise in a niche. You might be a very good candidate to be a leader for the product or service company that sells into that niche. So there might be an opportunity for you, and this is something you're going to take. There's always a media executive path, and I call it kind of like media executive path, where Red and Link are a great example, where as a creator, as you mature, you spend less and less time planning all the logistics around creating a business or creating content, and you spend more time thinking about long term, who do I need to hire to play those roles, so I can then eventually invest into other creators and create a network of creators who I lead, who I educate, who I teach how to make great content. And I have all this operational backbone that I've created in my company, Mythical, an example of Red and Link. And that system supports me and all of those creators. And now we're a media company. Now I have multiple different brands that I manage that are not related to me as a creator. I just invest in them and I help them grow. Or, and this is the final potential path, will not always be available for all different creator brands. But do you want to go and sell that brand? Do you want to build a business and sell that business? Are there different opportunities for you to go and pass it on to another type of investor, another type of creator who will take it to the next level? Faceless channels are a great example. They will always have those opportunities. Certain creators who build brands, like whether it's a footwear, whether it's a snacks, beverage business, some sort of consulting business, there might be ways for you to package it as an individual enterprise and sell it to a bigger company that will go and take it to the next level and leverage all that goodwill that you've kind of like created within this brand. So you have multiple different opportunities. And that's why this is less talking about the brand. This more talks about you as a creator. So as you start thinking about your future, you have the vision again, right? For your team, for the brand, you start thinking a little bit about, hey, how complex some of these monetization things that I'm taking on. But then finally, you kind of like step away from all of that and you ask yourself, what will I be happy with as my vision long term? Is this chapter 1, 2, and 3 of a 10 chapter book? And there's a lot more for me later down the line as a media executive, as a business executive. Are there opportunities for me to go build a business that I can sell, and that becomes a way for me to retire and maybe never create content again? Maybe you will be one of those artists who just at one point say, hey, I'm good. I did my thing. I wrote my albums. I created my movies. I'm done. I'm going to go do something else, right? Completely take on a different venture. And that usually very much facilitated by an opportunity to sell the business that you own because it gives you lump cash up front. So there are a lot of things for you to consider. And it's, again, one of those ideas that you can start thinking about right now and use it as a way to filter out and say no to certain opportunities. And then eventually, as you kind of like go through your creator career, a year from now, 2 years from now, 6 months from now, you should revisit and ask yourself, like, hey, did my opinion change? Is there something in the industry that changed? Maybe there's a completely new trend that I want to take advantage of. Is there some sort of like interesting business that I would want to lead? Again, the world is changing, industries change, technology change. Things that are influencing your decision today might completely be non-factor, or some new things will become a factor. They'll completely change your opinion. So kind of like the theme across all of these frameworks is that once you settle in on the hiring side of things and you kind of like know where your passions are, decisions around where your brand needs to be, decision around what kind of monetization opportunities you want to take on, because some will be retired, some will evolve and there'll be new opportunities, new monetization paths, and where you personally want to be. Those three things will always evolve with you as you mature and develop deeper understanding of yourself and the business that you're in. It will evolve as industries change and the technology completely evolve with the definition of what the good business looks like. There might be completely new things popping up on the side that might be a reason why you say, hey, this entire path was something I was following for the past 10 years. I made the most of it. I'm going to sell it, retire it, close it off. And it allows me, with all the financial maybe gains that I have, with my expertise and knowledge, allows me to switch tracks and follow this other opportunity, this other thing that I'm not going to do, that does not necessarily represent it as me being in front of the camera as a creator, but maybe it's represented by me being, again, media executive, some sort of technologist. Maybe you just go and enter completely new areas as an entrepreneur and you try to completely change it, right? Opportunities will always be there. The big theme of this entire video is you have to always investigate and interrogate yourself almost for what that great thing would look like for you. And it will evolve and it will change. And the biggest takeaway from all of this is that operationally, We can always talk. You have an idea, you can reach out and we can discuss how you can achieve it. Once you say yes to something, there are very much many ways to execute it. So that's not a problem. The biggest thing you have to learn is how do you use these frameworks to say no to opportunities that no matter how exciting they are, will be a distraction, will take you away from this direction, and will jeopardize potentially your entire creative brand. So, big part of managing a business, of an enterprise, of a creative brand is learning how to say no. And hopefully, these frameworks help you use a vision for yourself, for your brand, for your team as a way to filter out some of those opportunities, say yes to the right things, and then work with other creators, work with folks like myself to develop an actual operational backbone and very specific details on how you're going to achieve those things. And in the future, as my videos evolve, you'll see a few specific things where I'll describe to you what that future might look like with some templatized examples or examples of other creators. But for now, just know that executing things is a lot easier once you know exactly what you want from yourself, your creative brand, and what do you want to achieve long term, whether you're part of that brand or you're just an individual who's on your own journey or kicking back, enjoying your retirement on the beach. So I hope this was useful. I hope it gave you some ideas in terms of how you want to build your sustainable creative brand. If you have any questions, plot them in the comment section below or just reach out directly. And I'm always happy to chat with you about your specific use case. I'll see you next Saturday. Peace.